Well, hello everyone, one and all. Welcome back to the Backyard Tabletop. I'm very excited for today's podcast today, Curtis. We're doing something a little different today. I'm excited for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I just introduced you without actually introducing you.
That's okay. I'm here.
My name is Jacob.
My name's Curtis.
And we are best friends that love to talk about the game of Dungeons and Dragons. We've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for quite some time, Curtis.
We have been playing for quite some time.
At the end of this year, I think it's going to be 6 years for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really only like a year and a half ahead of you. So
yeah, that's pretty crazy. The really cool thing is that when we started this crazy thing that we had called Dungeons and Dragons, we started with a little adventure called the Mines of Phandevler.
The Lost Mines of Phandevler.
Okay, I'm gonna retake that. Pick up. Yes, you are correct. The Lost Mines of Phandevler. Because they were indeed lost, and there's obviously reasons why that is the thing. But for today's podcast, we're just essentially going to go through the adventure hooks and talk about chapter 1 of the new book that came out. And let me just make sure I say this one correctly. Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. Sources.
Correct.
D&D. Wait, hold on.
Yes. Yeah, it's a great little book. It seems very good. It's been getting decent reviews, you know. Kind of it's still a little new. Nobody's had time to really actually fully play through it yet. So all the reviews so far have just been read-throughs, which you got to give kind of a grain of salt to those, because you never really know how good a thing actually is until you've played it. You can get some ideas when you just read it through, but yeah.
Right. I don't know. I think majority of people that I have seen, at least, we're kind of, I think, hoping for a little bit, like for it to be a little bit different or a little bit more, is kind of a lot what I've seen. But I'm kind of sitting here like they didn't, at least for me, they didn't really advertise it that it's going to be anything new. The whole idea of this one was redoing the Lost Mines, because it's been 10 years since that one came out, and so they kind of bringing it into a new the new world of D&D. Obviously D&D has 5th edition has come a long way. Definitely some power creep, and in fact a lot of the stuff that we're probably going to talk about today is that we've noticed a lot of the difficulty has changed. So we'll get there, but like last week or a couple weeks ago for the podcast, we talked about our first impressions. Just kind of summing up your first impression of chapter 1, Curtis. What? Because Curtis has the unique thing of, he actually just did a session 0, didn't you?
I did.
A little bit ago. Curtis is going to be running this adventure, so
yeah,
that's kind of fun.
I just did a session 0 this last Saturday, so just a few days ago. Didn't actually do any gameplay, just all sat around, chatted, made sure everyone knew what class they wanted to play, kind of helped characters or players build their characters out and give them their plot hooks and backgrounds, and rolled their stats, and that's pretty much it.
Nice.
And then now we've got 2 weeks of in-between time for them all to kind of write their backstories and everything and get those to me and work with me on that, and then we'll start playing. So.
Yeah, very cool. Anyone, any like new classes anyone's playing? Okay, so first and foremost, I should say this right at the top: spoilers throughout this podcast for especially the new one. Yes,
especially if you're one of my players, please don't listen. We're gonna talk about stuff, and I don't want you to
spoiled.
Have a bad time just because you accidentally
exactly
listened.
You know, so. Curtis has a pretty good passive insight, so he's definitely going to know, like, oh, that plot twist did not land on them.
Yeah,
they obviously listened to the podcast.
Oh, interesting. You just so happen to take a spell this level that I know for a fact is something that the next boss you're going to fight is very weak to. Great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Lovely.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So
Um,
right up front,
I'm very excited.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Spoilers
very
for
excited to. Yeah. Definitely just spoilers. I'm excited to. This is going to be kind of fun and unique. That we'll kind of give our impressions, talk about the chapter, and then eventually along the lines you'll see how your games are going. And I'm sure we're probably going to get through the review a lot faster than obviously your game. So that'll just be with time. We'll talk about it. But like so right off the bat, since you just did a session 0, we'll jump right into adventure hooks. What players took what adventure hooks, and then like how does that tie into the overall adventure?
Yeah, so something that they did that's pretty cool. They're kind of moving in a way that's a little closer to how Pathfinder has done things for a long time, which I'm really glad they're kind of pushing this way a little bit, because it used to be that in the D&D books you'd get like 3 hooks at the beginning of the book to pull your players into it, and you just kind of had to assign those 3 hooks to your characters, kind of a thing.
Right.
Like I know Curse of Strahd has like 4, and they're all kind of different, and so you kind of have to like pair your people up with those hooks and have them all just kind of show up. But something else is that it's always been very obvious that like one of them is the real hook that is supposed to be how everyone gets there. But if that doesn't fit with their backstories, here's a bunch of other ones.
Right.
Something that Pathfinder does, which I love, is they actually come out with a player's guide to every single adventure that they release.
Right.
And that player's guide basically says, you can just give this to your players. They can read this. There's no major spoilers. And it will give them extra options for backgrounds. It'll give them information on the setting and where they're going to be and all those things that they need to know, some important figures that they might recognize if they're from this area. And it gives all your players a primer to be ready to play the story and feel like they fit and they fit into the world. I hope Wizards continues to kind of push that direction. They've taken a decent first step here, because what they've done is they've kind of given a list of kind of the most common backgrounds, I would say, some of the most common backgrounds in the player's guide, and said like, okay, if you have a player with this background, here's how they might be involved, and they might have a hook to get into this. If the player has this background, here's how they might have a hook and get into this. And it's super useful, because that's just like, it just helps immensely getting the players feeling like they're not just all meeting in a tavern and then suddenly something goes awry, right? It's very helpful to make your characters feel like they have a reason to be here and feel like they belong in the story.
And like just glancing through here, like on this background, like it basically looks like almost a chart, right? Like, so they have like Acolyte and then like a paragraph about if you pick Acolyte, this is kind of the theme. And a lot of them seem to kind of center around Neverwinter, and like just the Phandelver area and things like that. So it's just a great way to be like, hey, if you pick Hermit, you pretty much have spent your life in the Neverwinter area, the wilds around this area and things like that.
Yeah, kind of what they've done is, and this is also very different from Lost Mines, is that they've given you an actual starting point. Because in Lost Mines, it was just, let's talk about the initial backgrounds or backstories first.
Yeah,
the initial character hooks.
Yeah.
These are pretty much the same, if I remember correctly, from before. These are like the actual adventure hooks. The main one is the Meet Me in Phandalin adventure hook, which is almost exactly the same as it was from the other book. Basically states that well, other than this, it states that you're in the city of Neverwinter when your dwarf patron and friend, Gundren Rockseeker, big name in the book,
Big name in the book. Yep, he's back.
Hires you to escort a wagon to Phandalin. Gundren has gone ahead with a warrior, Sildar Hallwinter, in order to attend to business in the town while you follow with the supplies. You will be paid 10 gold each by the owner of Barthen's Provisions in Phandalin when you deliver the wagon safely. Mm-hmm. So that's almost exactly the same as in the previous book. Does the you were kind of going back to the old book and looking at things. Do you know if it states
now
you're in the city of Neverwinter at the beginning of the previous one?
Yes,
it does. Okay.
Yeah, it does say like the very beginning of part 1 is basically like you have a wagon full of provisions from supplies from Neverwinter going to Phandalin.
I see.
And so that's essentially that. There's also, I think, and I don't know if this one actually has that, but like the Lost Mines had like pre-made characters that were all tied in as well. And to me, I think that was kind of where the backgrounds was also kind of coming in, was kind of just with those pre-made characters. So they didn't have, from what I remember, I could go look, but I don't think they had like a complete list of like, if you pick Acolyte, this is what it is. It's like they had pre-made characters and they could tie into the story a little bit more so. But from what I understand, like Lost Mines was just for people that were picking up the game. It was not meant to overwhelm you in any case. Right. It was basically meant to pick up your dice and we're just going to start rolling and kind of get into this. So this one, they definitely went a little bit more, seems to be a little bit more into the adventurers, adventure hooks and things like that.
They also give you a couple of other adventure hooks. One is that you're a friend of the Harpers. Mm-hmm. And one is that you're a trainee in the Order of the Gauntlet, which are both well-known factions in Forgotten Realms, Faerun. So those are there too. I generally prefer not to be like connected to a large organization when I make a character. It just feels like I'm less of a individual and more just, I'm just here because the Harpers are paying me to, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which can be fun, but it's definitely not a path I tend to take. So those are the initial like adventure hooks. Those are the main hooks to push you towards Phandalin and getting involved with Gundren. Now, it does give a list, like we've said, a list of backgrounds, and then how these backgrounds can tie your character to the hooks. So we'll just start at the top here. Acolyte, and we don't have to go through every one of these, but just to give you an idea. So Acolyte background, Acolyte, typically going to be clerics, paladins, people that are in service to some sort of temple or deity. And the character plot hook that it gives to Acolyte is: the frontier town of Phandalin is resilient, but organized religious resources are scarce. Your temple in Neverwinter, again, it states that you are from Neverwinter, sent you to Phandalin to pray and offer communion with like-minded faithful.
Right.
They kind of all state that you start in Neverwinter, which I think is great. I think that's really cool. And what I've actually done with a lot of my players is say, go read about Neverwinter a little bit. Go get some background on where you're from, where you were, what this city was like. You may not have been there for very long, but you were in Neverwinter, and if you're around here, you would know what it's like. So, it kind of helps with the idle chatter and also writing your backstory a little bit. When you understand what Neverwinter's like, you can adjust your character a little to that.
Right. And great potential for if the characters want to link up backstories or leak up characters. You're both from the same town, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So we'll go down here to one that one of my players picked. Guild Artisan.
Yes.
It states,
Ooh.
you learned a useful trade in Neverwinter, but the city is home to too many artisans with that particular skill. Now you're heading to Phandalin, where you hope to start a lucrative business.
Okay. That's kind of fun. So, like, you're in hopes of going to start something in Phandalin since you're hearing that it's a frontier world kind of starting to get some resources.
And so, basically from that, my player who's playing an artificer.
Ooh, someone's going to be playing an artificer.
Yeah, so after we were kind of reading about it and stuff, Neverwinter is known for people that make water clocks and
oh, that's fun.
Geared mechanisms and lanterns and these beautiful, like, magically imbued like decor and stuff like that. And so it's like, okay, that makes perfect sense. If you're an artificer and you're in a guild in Neverwinter, it's like, okay, I've kind of plied my trade here a little, but there's just too many other people here doing what I'm doing. I can't get my head above the waters of all of these other people selling the same things I'm selling. And there's people in Neverwinter who've been doing this for years and years and years and years and years, right? Like, so there's an opportunity. I could go to Phandalin, kind of pick up my business there, sell my wares, get a little bit more repute, a little bit more stuff, and maybe I'll go back to Neverwinter eventually when I've got more years under my belt, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So, and that worked perfectly for the character, and so we kind of ran with that.
It almost could be it almost kind of could, depending on how you lean into it, but it almost kind of could have a Western theme to it, especially kind of at the beginning, right? It's a frontier town, so you're kind of
heading to the frontier to help build up this place that's brand new.
Right. Yeah. It could kind of have some fun Western vibes to it, which is kind of cool. I like that one a lot. Yeah. Do I get, like, what business was this character wanting to start? Was it just magic items,
it's just artifice. Yeah. So just creating, little delicate toys and magically imbued things that are, made with gears and brass and beautiful stuff. And so that's what they want to do, but there's already so much of that in Neverwinter. Mm-hmm. I didn't actually know too much about Neverwinter until I started reading about it for this, but apparently it's like a city of artisans. Like, that's what it's known for.
Oh, okay.
They're called water clocks, and they're basically magically imbued small or large clocks that work with a water elemental to, like, power turbines or something like that to keep time.
That's so fun.
And so it's like, okay, well, this city's probably well known for people who make watches too, like use gears and brass, and it's also known for, like, magically lit beautiful lanterns for your home, as well as being known kind of lesser so for floral decorations and people that, like, plant things and decorate cities and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's a great place to start as an artisan, but then it's very hard to, like, it's like going to LA to be an actor, right? It's like,
right,
there's so much opportunity there, but there's also billions of other people doing the exact same thing you're trying to do. So it's hard to get your neck out.
The rest of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so
let me ask this, Curtis, just right off the bat, since it is kind of a lot of the backgrounds, that's something I noticed. Do you think this book should have had a little bit more about Neverwinter as a town? Like even an appendix or something like that? You as a dungeon master, do you feel like that would have been something nice? I know it's not necessarily...
it's not super important to the plot of the story. Phandalin is much more important to the story going forward, which is another thing I've told my players. Like, you're from Neverwinter, but in the course of the adventure, you're not going to go back there. So don't spend too much time, like, I have a house here on this street, and I looked up a map, and my shop was right here. And, like, Don't get that detailed. Just
Okay.
I would have liked a quick, like even just a little, one of the little green boxes on the side that's like, Neverwinter is a town that's right here, and it's known for this, and these people do it, and trade is often plied there, and Gundren and his brothers are bought their supplies from there so that they could go to this. Like, that's enough for me. That would give me, okay, I have enough there to kind of give my players an idea of what Neverwinter's like, so that they can get out and know where they're coming from.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, because that's because I obviously, like I said, I didn't really go through the adventure hooks and the backgrounds, so I'm just kind of curious if that would have been really nice. So it is kind of a little bit of a bummer that you kind of have to do a little bit of your own research, I guess. But like you said, not really that big of a deal. Just
it's not that big a deal
here.
And I feel like the reason they didn't think about it is because it's not important to the plot. Why you're leaving Neverwinter or what's there. It just helps a little bit with character creation in this sense. Gotcha. We'll do one more. We'll talk about. This one's really cool actually. Because so we'll talk about Sage. I have a player who's playing a Sage as well.
Ooh.
Sage being, someone who might be like a cloistered person who has studied history and books a lot and things like that. Somebody who likes to study. And it says, in the academic halls of Neverwinter, you studied the region's historical alliance between Phandalin and its neighbors. The fate of the Lost Mine of Phandevler has always fascinated you, so you're traveling to Phandalin to discover whether any locals know rumors about its fate. And that one's really cool because that's the only background that even mentions the mine at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Because even in like Gundren hiring you, you don't know that he's looking for the lost mine until later in the campaign. So it's really cool that it's like, oh, whoa, this one person knows about this mine, and
Right. Because that was something that was said right up front. That was like, Gundren hired you, and he was very excited about this journey, but he was very secretive about what it was, which is comes out later. But that's
and cool. So the character that did that was like, okay, I'm interested in this mine because it's got interesting prospects about having a magical history and a very important history to the land. And I heard about a guy who's trying to start up a new mine over in Phandalin, and he's leaving now. Okay, great. I'll join that caravan. So like that's perfect. And so basically what I did personally is I took all of these backgrounds that my characters did and basically said, you want to get to Phandalin. We know that from your background. Mm-hmm. You, one way or another, hear that there's a guy paying people to take the trip to Phandalin, and you're like, great.
Heck yeah.
Strength in numbers, and I get to just sit on a cart for the whole trip, and I get paid? Yeah. Sounds great. Mm-hmm. Too good to pass up. So that's kind of how I tied everyone into that one thing. There's one person who we worked it out that they kind of knew Gundren and that he was a patron of theirs and that he invited them on this. Everyone else is just taking the opportunity to go with this opportunity.
Very
so
cool. Yeah. Well, that transitioning into chapter 1, and this was kind of fun because like bouncing back and forth between like all through this chapter, I was just bouncing back and forth between Lost Mines and the new one, and it's really fun to see like almost like there are places where it's like word for word identical. There's a couple like word changes and things flowing. Kind of like, the difference between like when you write an essay and then when your mom looks over your essay and it's like, this could be shorter. It's like, things are a little bit more like they make a little bit more, not necessarily more sense,
a little more
but
concise.
Some things flow a little bit better. It's like even just like the phrases was like some things that were said. It's like that's very D&D adventure-esque like type of thing. So In the new one, you can tell that they've kind of updated the wording and kind of made things flow a little bit more. But they, like you said, it starts out right off the bat with driving a wagon. It's been your characters your characters have two ox driving a wagon, and you have the choice to have, your people could be, some people could be riding on it, walking next to it, driving. Someone has to be driving, which is kind of fun right off the bat. It kind of just lets the players, you're all together, right?
Yep.
Instead of like there's no NPCs. The DM is basically like, all right, here you guys are, explains the situation, and depending on your group, I find that like that's a great place to just role play right off the bat, of just being like, what do you got? What have you guys been talking about on the road and things like that?
Yeah, and personally, it gives you some, recommendations for kind of how to start the chapter here. It says, encourage the players to introduce their characters, ask the players to think about how they came to know Gundren, and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what I already did in session 0, just to get people to understand how they came upon this dwarf and his offer. And then it also says to ask the players how they are traveling. And if they're escorting the wagon, then it says 2 people need to be, 1 or 2 people need to be driving, and the rest can either ride or walk alongside it or scout ahead. I really like that it gives those kind of recommendations and examples of like, because I think the thing is, this is still kind of a good adventure to start people with. Oh, yeah. Especially because it's you could still end it at the end of Lost Mine. You could still end it at the end of chapter 4.
I think 4. It is. Yeah.
At level 5. But if you get to that point and everybody's like, okay, that was kind of cool, let's start something else. Or if they're like, this is so cool, let's keep going, then you can go all the way to 12,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like that they still give little things like that to kind of encourage new DMs about because the other thing is, this is a great adventure for new DMs. We talk about new players a lot. It's a great adventure for new DMs. It gives you so many good examples of questing and story and how to set things up for the future and how a dungeon works. Like all of these things. It's a very, very good setup for a new DM as well. So
yeah,
I think they still understood that and still tried to give some of these
right. Kind of like what we said last time on our first impressions. They definitely might be riding the waves of like the D&D movie and the success of Baldur's Gate 3. And so there's definitely some of that going on where they're like, okay, we'll pull these new people, so they still want to keep with the new thing, and it doesn't overwhelm you with information. It lets you just kind of give the things to the players and start going with it, and just kind of right off the bat, I think it's always great to like give those moments that very traditional thing of introducing each player. In this case, they're already all together on the wagon, so you just explain the wagon and then let the players describe what they look like and what they might be doing, right? The rogue is like, I think I'm going to be scouting, and so that's a tidbit about their character, right? So it's like they're stealthy. They're going to probably be more on the security side, whereas the people that are wanting to start a business might be like, no, I'm staying with the group, right? So that's a great way to explain certain things like that.
And definitely myself, I plan on starting the adventure with travel. I want to start leaving Neverwinter. That's how I want to start the campaign.
Okay.
And kind of go through the couple of days travel so that the characters get a couple chances to, because, if you're traveling with people, you're going to chat and you're going to talk about things. So I want to give the players a chance to have a couple of, campfire nights and just introduce the characters and have some chats and get some of those, new character jitters out of the way before a lot of the main craziness starts.
Oh yeah. And And especially from a perspective of them, like their characters as people, it's like if they're going to a new place, they might like this is an opportunity to at least make some new friends,
For
maybe
sure.
even a prospective business partner. Or,
Yeah.
if this soldier looking guy, maybe I might need some help for security or something. It might be good to know. I don't know.
And if
just
all
great
you're doing
for
is
character's perspective.
If all you're doing is making a quick buck, then you don't have to talk.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, no,
But-
I'm just here to make money.
But other people will definitely be able to ask you questions. Yeah. So, very cool. I just really like that they emphasize a lot that it's like you're all meeting in Neverwinter and then traveling, because I plan on using that time to be the tavern moments.
Yeah.
Do
you think you might have some random encounters before this next part of the Goblin Ambush, or are you just gonna
no,
just
I
explain
don't
the
think
environments,
so.
let your players talk a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably be pretty quick. I really don't plan on it being more than like the first hour necessarily, unless roleplay just goes on for a really long time.
Okay.
I just want to give an opportunity. I don't want to go through the dredges of travel as the first thing players do in the game. So we don't need to do watches. We don't need to do, rations, all that stuff. It's just, I just want to give opportunities to be like, you guys travel for a day, you come to camp for the night, you see each other around the campfire. Why don't you all explain your characters, and then we've got some time around the camp here if you guys want to roleplay it all, kind of a thing. Like, and that's where I'll leave it. And if everyone's like still like, we're all nervous to meet new people and we don't want to talk like in character, then it's like, okay, cool. The next day goes by. You've been with these people for a little while now. There's another night that you get to sit around the campfire. Anyone want to say anything? Like, just giving those opportunities to have those introductions and things, I think is important, because the way it's almost kind of written in this, and we'll get to this, the way it's almost kind of written in this is that it's like, all of you met with Gundren Rockseeker and were hired to go to Phandalin. You all got on the wagon and then you started going, and you were on the road for a day and a half, and suddenly you come across, like, that's kind of how it's written.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And
I don't want to do that.
Point, yeah.
Because I don't want the very first thing the characters do is fight.
Yeah.
In an ambush. I want them to meet each other. I want them to see each other, have options to talk about their characters and explain themselves,
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. No, I'm definitely with you. Usually it's always great, because then you can also kind of get into your character, your mindset for your character. So then when you get into combat, you can even use what little information you have to explain those little quirks and stuff. So so you're going to probably start it a little bit more slow than the book has it, but the book, like you said, it just jumps right into it. Several hours after the characters have turned on to Tribor Trail, there is a map. It's labeled as the Goblin Ambush, and this is like probably the quintessential encounter from this ambush to the end of this chapter going into the Goblin Cave. It's like, this is like the thing you pull up when you're trying to explain to a DM what a dungeon should be, what an encounter should be. Like, this has probably been just read aloud so much to new people. But also going back to what you said about new DMs, is that there is probably so much information online that if you don't like how it is in here, there's ways to completely change this, just going on Reddit, or just because how long it's been around and how many DMs have gone through this over and over again. There's so many resources for it. But this is also where we run into the at least for me, the first thing I noticed that was different between Lost Mines and this one. And do you want to guess what it was?
More goblins, right?
Or
no?
No. So I think they both had 4 goblins. So just to explain this, the characters are going.
Weird. I remember only 2 when I ran it. I might have. I might have bumped it down.
I have it here. Let's just go.
I'm going off
4
of
goblins.
Memory. Yeah,
4 goblins were hiding, is what Lost Mine says, So just to explain this real quick, you guys are traveling along. You on this road. It's Triboard Trail, and you come across a scene, and it looks like a fight has happened. In Lost Mines, there were arrows everywhere, and the horses were killed. They were shot full of arrows. In this one, the horses are alive.
That's what I was thinking too, because I remember that the last time when we played this, one of the ways you guys understood what was going on and got a little bit of a head start to knowing what happened was one of you rolled a really good you rolled a check to check one of the arrows, and you recognized it as a goblin arrow.
Yes.
Before the thing even started. And I remember looking at this and being like, did I make that up? Like, I don't think I would have made that up. That seems interesting. So that's very interesting.
Well, that was really interesting. And I was reading through this, and I told Sarah that, and she's like, that wizard is learning.
Yeah, don't kill the animals.
Well, and the first thing I thought of when I read that, I was like, oh, this would be a really interesting use of Speak with Animals, which is a first level spell. And if you have a druid or a wizard or
a druid, actually.
Ranger probably wouldn't have it at first level, but would be able to ask the horses about what went on. In Lost Mines, and I mean, in this one too, they explain that you can do some investigating, look around. You can find, there's this place has been ransacked, and things like that. But I was like, but if anyone has Speak with Animals, they could cast it and ask the horses, like, hey, what went on? Which would be very interesting. So that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, that's kind of cool and different.
That's very cool. I didn't think about that. I'm gonna have to prepare for that because I do have a druid. So
maybe it's Baldur's Gate 3 that really has just made me realize how dangerous Speak with Animals could be.
For sure.
But yeah, so that was the first thing I thought of. But it goes as far. You can do some investigating, but you do get ambushed by 4 goblins here. And then it gives you it's the development section of essentially all the goblins are going to fight to the death until there's one left, and the one left is going to try and run. You could potentially knock them out. You knock out a goblin, wait till it comes back to consciousness and question it, things like that. But essentially the idea is you're going to follow all the tracks if you do some investigating up to where the cave is.
Correct.
And I actually don't know what the cave's name is. Curtis?
Cragmaw Hideout, I believe.
There it is. Cragmaw's Hideout. Yeah, so it's kind of a cave. It's a hideout. But all of that was pretty similar to Lost Mines. But I don't know why. I just like the fact that they chose to leave the horses alive in this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, on the way there is 2 traps like you had said previously.
Mm-hmm.
There's a snare. It's like 10 minutes of traveling on this trail of where all the goblins tracks that you can find. There's a snare that will grab you. It's like the classic, grabs you by
grabs your ankle and
grabs your ankle, holds you. You do some bludgeoning damage if you don't ease it. If you don't, they just cut you down right away. And then a pit trap. Both of these were actually very similar to Lost Mines. However, in this one, both of them require a DC 15 Wisdom Perception check, whereas in Lost Mines, the first one was only a DC 12 to notice it.
Interesting.
So that was
just
something different about that.
Slightly general increase in difficulty. Pretty normal.
Which is interesting for first level, because I guess this is kind of to me, DC 15 is pretty hard for first level.
Well, it's pretty hard in general.
Yeah. So, because my idea was with the in Lost, because the second one, the pit trap, has been camouflaged, so that one would be a little bit harder. but the snare, it doesn't say anything about it, but it kind of, I guess, is inclined that that would be a little bit trickier to see as well. Or maybe it's just for sake of ease that just both require a DC 15 perception check.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then we come up to the cave, and they obviously explain the area. This is a classic cave. If you have not seen this dungeon, it probably would be kind of surprising to me, unless you're new to D&D.
It's a great map. It's a great map.
Yeah. Great, basically a 5-room dungeon, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a very, very classic one. And this is where I kind of noticed, and just throughout, and I know we talked a little bit about this, this was just me, and I was just kind of going through this, and each encounter I would plug into the D&D Beyond encounter builder. Each encounter would be labeled as hard to deadly in this room, which is kind of crazy for level 1. And so this whole fight, I was like, wow, this is a hard battle for level 1 characters. What's your first impression on
so
this whole thing, Curtis?
So even in the original, I think there's been a slight increase in difficulty here. Even in the original, it was all doing this whole dungeon would have been very difficult for level 1 players if they were just doing it straight up.
Right.
Here's the thing about this dungeon. It's very fun, very tricksy. There's a lot of opportunities to trick the goblins, talk to the goblins, gain some allies, like possibly in the wolves or things like that, or later on later on you meet a goblin that hates the boss and wants to be the boss instead, so you can be his friend and he'll help you. Like, there's all sorts of opportunities in here. If it was just a straight up fight the whole time, yeah, that's pretty rough. But there's plenty of opportunities to kind of ease it in a way that feels very fun and interesting. Mm-hmm. And if the players are smart and they're sneaking around, there's definitely plenty of opportunities for them to sort of solve problems before they come to them, in certain ways. Because the one thing that this does say is that the river rushing through kind of dampens a lot of sound in this cave. And so it makes it a little easier for characters to not be noticed or heard, which is super big and super important, and could be super useful in this situation. So I think with a lot of those things kept in mind, I think it's just an interesting way to kind of show the characters that if you're just bum rushing everything and trying to just kill everything you see, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. But if you're smart about it and you think about it and you try to talk your way out of certain things and try to sneak your way through other things, it's not going to be as hard as you think it will.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that is a great way of explaining that, because and I think as dungeon masters, I think we should be aware when we go to build encounters, don't just think about the enemies. Think of, like, if you are kind of just thinking about the enemies and you're like, wow, this could be really hard. It's like, okay, what's something that I could change about the environment to maybe make it less difficult on my party? And that's a great point. Is like, so just a brief overview with this encounter. There's the cave mouth. There's potentially of turning into a room right off the bat, and that leads to some wolves that Curtis mentioned. Further up, there is
even before the cave mouth, there's the thicket to the side. That has three goblins.
Right, the guards at the cave mouth. Yeah, so you can be essentially using like the thicket as like a means to like for cover, because I think it gives you like 3/4 cover and things like that.
Yeah, this says that if the players are like talking loudly or try to make camp outside of the cave mouth, that the goblins on the other side of the thicket notice them and will attack, and the players will be surprised. But if the players make it all the way to the stream, they'll notice the goblins and a fight will break out and either side is surprised. But the players might also try and sneak up to the cave mouth, in which case they might get the surprise on the goblins. So
Right. So it's like it very much depends on how your players go about it, right? And then, like you said, there's the potential of finding some wolves kind of at the very beginning that you could get on your side with some handling checks, or just leave them be. There's another room that we find in this place. We find that this goblin tribe, the Cragmaws, I believe is what they're called, is run by a bugbear, and he is kind of bullying the other goblins. So there's a goblin here that is wanting to do a little bit of an uprising, and so Yemek, I still remember his name. And in the new one, before it was just him. In this one, there actually is two boss goblins. There's a new stat block in here for a boss goblin, that he has like a partner. So that makes that whole encounter even a little bit more challenging. Which is in Lost Mines, it was a regular goblin. He just had 12 hit points instead of 7 hit points. So they actually like bumped up his overall abilities, which is kind of fun, different, and kind of what we need here, and to bump things up a little bit. And so we learn that he will threaten. We learn that what was our dwarven man that hired us? Starts with a G. Gundren. Gundren had a partner.
Yes, Sildar.
And Sildar, who is being held captive here. So he threatens Sildar. You see him and you recognize him as this was the partner of the person that hired you. And he threatens him, if you go kill the bugbear, we'll let you go. We'll see if you can trust goblins or not.
Right. Yeah.
And then some fun traps. I remember when we did this years ago, we fell very much victim to this, I believe almost twice, I think. Where if we're going up the stream, you can get hit with a wall of water come rushing down and wash you completely.
It was twice.
Back out.
Yeah, so the goblins up in kind of the far northeast cavern, all the way up at the very top of the cave, they have set up like 2 reservoirs, basically, that hold the water coming into the cave and kind of fill up and then run over into the stream. But if at any point they notice there are intruders coming up the main path, which has to travel alongside the stream, the goblins will sound an alarm and they'll knock out the stones holding one of these reservoirs back, and that reservoir will quickly empty into this singular pathway and has a chance of catching your players and washing them back out to the opening of the cavern. But there are 2 reservoirs, so they can technically do this twice. Yeah, and so if you're not careful about coming back up, and now they're on the lookout for you, and you're not ready to like hop off to the side when the water comes or something, they'll knock the other stone out and just wash you right back out again.
Back out. Yeah. And what I love about this trap is, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it didn't have damage, right? Does it have no, it does have a little bit of damage, right?
Let's see here.
I forgot. Flood. There it is.
Yeah, so
there's a little bit of damage.
Water surges. When the water happens,
you have to make
creatures in the tunnel.
There's a dex save to avoid it. There's a strength save if you get hit, and then if you fail, it's 2d6 bludgeoning damage, and you fall prone, and you kind of get washed to the beginning of the entrance again.
Yeah,
so there's a little bit.
So it's a dex to completely avoid it, but the dex is only a DC 10, which is kind of nice.
Right.
So it's a DC 10 to just kind of hold your ground and not get swept. If you fail that, then you have to make a DC 15 strength save to hold on and not get swept away. And if you fail that, that's when you take the damage. Otherwise, you just get swept down to the bottom.
Which makes sense, because this has a potential of knocking out a wizard completely. So sad wizard vibes indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, with all of that, you can you can find the partner, and you can slay the bugbear. And this is where there is a bunch of rations that are and supplies from caravans that these goblins have been stealing from.
Yes.
And do you want to talk a little bit about what these goblins are serving? And then that's where I think we'll transition to like chapter 2, but that's where we'll kind of wrap up.
Yeah.
This chapter 1, it's a very short chapter, but it's basically the entire beginning, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the boss here, like you said, is a bugbear. His name's Clarg. Great name for a bugbear.
Classic.
But Clarg himself is not really very high up in the whole Cragmaw kind of society in general. And also the Cragmaw goblinoid clan itself is taking orders from a different master, being somebody called the Spider, who eventually you'll find out is a drow magician. Or wizard or mage, who is, I think he's a wizard, might be a sorcerer, but a drow mage who is trying to basically gain access, well, at least originally, was trying to just gain access to the mine of Phandelver. In this, we also find out that the Spider themselves is serving an even greater master, who maybe we'll save a little bit of that for later too, because a lot of that stuff doesn't really come out until the whole Phandelver stuff is finished anyway. So,
well, there is a few goblins that I did find. If you want to, you can question goblins. You can knock them out and question goblins here, and they allude to a goblin that came to this cave that had like an enlarged cranium or elongated face. I believe
and
they explain it a little bit.
Yeah.
But strange powers, but they don't know anything about it. They don't work with them. In fact, the other goblins are kind of scared of that one that came here.
They're scared of them, and that other goblin didn't like say anything, and he would help with and it's not like one particular goblin. It's a new type of goblin that they've seen a few times, and they'll be sent from Cragmaw higher ups. They'll come in, they'll help with one, take on a caravan, and then as soon as the fight is over, they just leave. They don't help loot. They don't do anything else. Almost like they're just like testing their abilities. They'll help take down a caravan, and then they'll just leave. And so it kind of freaks the other goblins out, because they're like, they've got weird powers. They look weird. They don't even help loot or anything. They just leave. They're in and then they're out, and it's super weird. Yeah.
So it's just like, if the characters choose to, can get some potential alluding to some future things. So it's a little creepy, very fun, and it's just like, so that's really kind of the only difference, apart from some difficulty changes and some word changes. The really only difference is that they've added in, if the characters choose to like start really questioning things and what's going on here, who are you working for, that the goblins can explain a little bit more. So
gives them an
kind
opportunity
of fun, different.
to discover some things that make way for plot points in the future.
Yeah.
And it's very cool, because I mean, you could get that plot point this early, and then nothing will come of it until chapter 5, because you don't see any of those goblins until then, I don't think. Yeah. I don't think you see any of them in the early 4 chapters.
Yeah, and I haven't delved too deeply into details. I don't think you do. I think there's more stuff that will happen that will allude to things.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
You don't see anything. It's just like this kind of looming threat, so to say. Well, this is going to be a very fun. This is different. I like it. It's kind of fun, different. We'll just make our way, go through this adventure. Thank you so much for tagging along with us, everybody.
Yeah,
This is kind of
basically,
fun.
chapter 1 ends. If you save Sildar, that's great, and then you take out the goblins, and then you head to Phandalin and turn in your cart, get your gold, and your next goal is to basically figure out what happened to Gundren and try and
Yeah.
find him. And so
Or
we'll
start setting up shop if you so choose to.
Yeah.
Because there was even a whole thing of like if your characters completely miss the trail for the goblins, they can continue on to Phandalin to essentially do what they
do
did,
what
and
they
then later
were told to.
Yeah, and I think there was some ideas on if your players, there's people that can come to ask you like, hey, Gundren never showed up. Can you go investigate? And they'll be like, oh, okay, we'll go back there.
Right.
Do some more investigating. There's even like if those 4 goblins, you just happen to be rolling really well as a DM and your players are not, they may need to go to Phandalin to rest and to get more supplies and then come back. If there's a TPK, the goblins don't kill them; they just knock them out. There's that whole thing. So kind of fun little things, but yeah, that's kind of the whole how it's traditionally supposed to go. Is you'll continue on to Phandelver. Now, that's Curtis, great. I can't end this chapter without talking a little bit about how you ran this before, and I'm curious if you're going to do anything different. So. For those of you that don't know, Curtis obviously ran this for us when we had been first getting into D&D, and we were all coming together to play this game. Now, if I remember correctly, we actually started at level 2, or we started at level 1, and then like on the way to the cave, you leveled us up to level 2. It was something like that.
Yeah, so I had read a lot of those things that said like, this cave is crazy for level 1. Like, it's super difficult. And so what I did was I decided to sort of level you guys. I think I leveled you guys up at the mouth of the cave, or maybe after the ambush. I think it was right after the ambush. Once you guys defeated the 4 goblins, you leveled up. And I think what I did from there was I took that and then just kind of added a little bit of complexity to the cave itself in order to kind of still make it feel interesting and difficult, but not deadly, because we were all new, so I didn't want to just like kill you guys in the first 2 sessions.
100%. And the coolest thing that I remember you doing is because of that, we were able to get through encounters a little bit better. Oh, my camera just died. So now it's just my voice, everybody. And you just get Curtis. Right at the end of the podcast. Wonderful. Well, this is just going to be... we'll just get Curtis's reaction to this. You'll just hear it in my voice. What was so cool is you pretty much ran this the exact same as the book until the very end with the fight with... Are you, like, mouthing me? It's like you're pretending to be me right now. Oh, lovely. Thank you. We got to the bugbear, Clarg, and it was like a Jabba the Hutt moment where the moment we entered, there was a trap that opened up into the floor, and underneath there was a gelatinous cube.
Yep.
And this added... such a level of complexity to the fight that was really fun. That to this day is still probably one of my favorite encounters that we have done, because I was a monk and there was a whole part. We had a rogue and my wife Sarah. She was she was a rogue. Or no, she was a rogue. Jesse was also playing. I think he was a rogue, and we had a cleric. I believe was Joelle a cleric or a ranger?
Joelle wasn't playing at this point yet. She didn't join until later. She was a ranger, but she didn't join until later.
Okay. Maybe that was it. Oh no, it was a couple other friends.
Yes.
I do remember. So there was 5 of us, but I remember like Jesse had fallen in and was fighting the gelatinous cube. We were fighting the bugbear up top. We wound up having to like. We're getting very close. There was a moment where I had to jump into the pit to go get Jesse out, and using my monk ability of second, it was like the monk ability where you can dash. I can't remember what it's called, but using a rope to get up. I can't remember because it was years ago, but in my mind, it was still one of my favorite.
And then you threw Clarg's wolf into the cube. Uh-huh. And
I believe I had like a -1 or 2 to strength, and I wound up winning that roll.
Yeah, you pushed it in. And what's really interesting is in the book, it basically says that if you kill the wolf before you kill Clarg runs away.
Okay. Okay.
But I was just like, that's messed up. He's not gonna run away. He's gonna like get enraged, and now he's mad because you turned his own thing against him and killed his puppy. Like, went John Wick on you. So yeah, it was great. It was a really cool first boss fight. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I'll have to think about adjusting some stuff this time too.
Well, you're welcome to that. I just wanted to bring that up just from a place of, hey, if you are listening to this and you're like, you want something a little bit different to add a little bit more to the encounter. Mm-hmm. One, I would not be afraid of bumping your characters up to level 2, because this is a little bit, to me, this was like each encounter had the potential of being hard or deadly.
Well,
depending on how you go about it, obviously, like what we were talking about.
Even our wizard could almost die instantly from one of those traps just from the fall damage.
Yeah.
Our wizard has 7 health, so if he gets both of the traps, he's dead. Basically.
Yeah.
So level 1's rough. Especially doing a whole dungeon like this at level 1, it's tough.
Yeah. And so I say this mainly from a perspective of like, if you want that hard hitting, by all means go for it. But if you want to like maybe, if you don't want as much time, like your character's resting or having to debate whether or not they need to run out of the cave to go long rest and then come back in, I wouldn't be afraid of upping it at least to level 2, just from a place that the fighter can get second wind, the cleric can get their channel divinities, a
couple people get
or not second wind, action surge, excuse me. But anyway, the monks can get certain abilities and then do something a little bit different, like throw a gelatinous cube and Jabba the Hutt moment. It took us completely by surprise. It was very fun. So anyway, I just couldn't end this podcast without mentioning that.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, thank you all so much for watching / listening. For those of you who are watching, you only get Curtis now because my camera died.
It's me. I'm here. If you're watching at this point, the secret word is Clarg.
Oh, that's a great one. Yes.
Klarg, Clarg.
Yes.
And if I find out at the end of this that either Joelle or Dip, because they're the two that definitely watch these all the time, or Katie, watched this, everyone else will level up and you won't.
Oh, there it is. It said, oh no. Well, we will say, we'll probably put in like the Discord or something like, hey, you guys can go watch it now when you guys are
after chapter 1. Yeah, because that's the cool thing is once we finish chapters, they can go back and watch these, which will be kind of cool.
Exactly. Well, again, thank you all so much for watching / listening. I have been Jake.
I've been Curtis. I'm the only one here now.
Yeah, it's just Curtis. It was always just Curtis. If you would like us to do more reviews like this, let us know. This is kind of a new experience, so let us know even how we did. We would love to hear from you. Absolutely. This is kind of fun, Curtis. I liked doing this.
Very cool.
I think it's like new career move. Here we go.
Okay.
I'm waving goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, wow. That was fun.